Welcome back. In this video, we'll explore 20 of the most important vocabulary terms in immigration law, all explained in clear English and used in real legal contexts. Whether you're a lawyer, legal assistant, student, or professional helping people navigate immigration systems, these are the words you need to know. Here's how it works. Each term will appear on the screen with a real definition and a real example. I'll explain what the term means, how it's used, and why it matters in immigration law. And at the end, you'll hear a short story using most of the terms so you can test your comprehension and see the words in action. Visa. Let's begin with one of the most common terms, visa. A visa is an official document, usually stamped in your passport, that allows a person to enter, stay, or work in a country for a specific purpose and time. For example, she received a student visa to attend university in Canada. This means immigration authorities approved her stay for educational purposes. There are many types of visas: tourist visas, work visas, and student visas, and each comes with specific rules and time limits. Understanding visa categories is one of the first steps in any immigration process. Permanent resident. A permanent resident is someone who is legally allowed to live in a country long-term, but they're not yet a citizen. They usually have the right to work, study, and travel freely within the country, but usually they are not allowed to vote or hold certain public offices. For example, he became a permanent resident of the United States after marrying a citizen. This means he received legal approval to stay in the U.S. indefinitely, even though he hasn't applied for or received citizenship yet. Asylum. Asylum is a form of protection. When someone flees their home country, usually because of violence, persecution, or war, they can go to another country and ask for asylum. Here's an example. She applied for asylum because she feared political persecution in her own country. This means she asked to stay legally in a new country for her own safety. Asylum seekers often go through interviews and legal hearings before they're granted protection. Deportation. Deportation is a serious legal action. It means that a person is forced to leave the country, usually because they've broken immigration rules. For example, they have committed a crime or they have overstayed a visa. For example, he faced deportation after overstaying his visa. That means he remained in the country longer than his visa allowed, and the government began the process to remove him from the country. Lawyers often work hard to stop deportation or appeal it in court. Work permit. A work permit gives a person legal permission to work in a country where they are not a citizen. It is often required before starting a job, even for short-term positions. For example, she applied for a work permit after receiving a job offer. That means she got a job, but before she could begin working, she needed legal permission, which usually comes from the immigration office or labor department. Refugee. A refugee is someone who has well-founded fear of being persecuted, and usually they've been forced to flee their home due to war, danger, or persecution, and who has been given legal protection, international protection, in another country. For example, thousands of refugees arrived seeking safety after the conflict. Unlike tourists or job seekers, refugees don't choose to leave their country. They leave because it's too dangerous for them to stay. Naturalization. It is the legal process that allows a non-citizen to become a citizen. For example, and this applies in Costa Rica, after 5 years of residency, she applied for naturalization. In many countries, this process includes passing a language test, a civics test, and demonstrating good moral character. Once naturalized, a person gains full legal rights, including voting and holding a passport. Immigration status is a person's legal standing or condition under immigration law. For example, tourist, permanent resident, or undocumented. Are you a tourist, a worker, a student, a refugee? That's your immigration status. For example, her immigration status changed after she received her green card. She went from a temporary status, maybe a visitor, to permanent residency with more rights and less risk. Green card. This is applicable to the U.S. A green card means you can live and work in the U.S. permanently, but you are not a citizen yet. It's called a green card because the original document was green. After 5 years with the green card, she applied for citizenship. That's the usual path. You live, work, and build your life, and later you can take the next step toward full citizenship. Sponsorship. Sponsorship is the act of supporting someone's immigration application. It is usually by a relative or employer. It means someone is helping you legally enter or stay in a country. It could be your spouse, your parents, or your company. For example, his employer offered him sponsorship for a work visa. In this case, the company is saying, yes, we want this person, we will follow the rules and take responsibility. That's a big deal. In many cases, without sponsorship, many applications are denied. Citizenship. Citizenship is the final step. It means you belong to the country fully. It means having the status of being a legal member of a country with full rights and responsibilities. For example, after passing the test, he received his citizenship and a passport. Citizenship often means security. You can't be deported and you have full protection under the law. Removal proceedings. Removal proceedings refers to the legal process in which a non-citizen is formally ordered to leave the country. For example, he is facing removal proceedings after overstaying his visa. This process usually involves an immigration court and a judge who decides whether the person must leave the country or can stay under special circumstances. Entry ban. An entry ban is a legal order that blocks someone from entering a country. The government is saying, you cannot come into the country for now. This could happen for many reasons. For example, past immigration violations or serious criminal offenses. For example, because of his criminal record, he received a 5-year entry ban. That means for 5 years, he's legally blocked from entering the country. Entry bans can usually be appealed or lifted, but only under certain legal conditions. Border control. Border control refers to the government agency that checks and decides who can enter or leave a country. It's usually the first stop when you arrive at a country. They check your passport, your visa, and usually ask questions. They decide, can you enter or not? For example, Border Control asked to see his passport and visa at the airport. If something looks wrong, missing documents, wrong visa, suspicious activity, they can usually deny entry right there. That's why it's important to always travel with the right papers and prepare for possible questions. Immigration officer. An immigration officer is a person who works for the government and enforces immigration rules. You will meet them at the airport, at consulates, or immigration offices. They check documents, ask questions, and make decisions. For example, the immigration officer checked his documents and asked a few questions. Always try to be respectful and honest when speaking with them. Their job is, usually, to protect the law and ensure rules are followed. Temporary Protected Status, or TPS. This is the legal status granted to individuals from countries affected by conflict or disaster, allowing them to stay temporarily. For example, after the earthquake, citizens of that country received temporary protected status. So, TPS allows people to stay, live, and work in a certain country for a limited time, but it usually does not lead to permanent residency. Biometrics appointment. A biometrics appointment is where immigration authorities collect your fingerprints, photo, and signature for security checks. For example, she received a notice for her biometrics appointment next week. This step is required for many immigration processes like green cards, asylum, or citizenship. Detention. Detention means that a person is held in custody by immigration authorities while their case is being processed. It can happen if someone crosses a border without papers, overstays a visa, or sometimes if they're waiting an immigration court decision. For example, he was placed in detention while waiting for his asylum hearing. That means he was not allowed to leave and had to wait in the detention center until the judge made a decision. Detention is a serious part of immigration law, and lawyers usually often help clients get released while their cases move forward. Adjustment of status. Adjustment of status is the legal process of changing from one immigration status to another. They might go from student to resident, or from temporary to permanent. For example, he applied for adjustment of status to become a permanent resident. In Costa Rica, you can go from temporary resident to permanent resident after 3 years, so you apply for an adjustment of status. Immigration court. Immigration court is not the same as a criminal court. It is a special court that hears about cases for deportation, asylum, and other immigration issues. For example, she went to immigration court to present her asylum claim. The judge decides if a person can stay or must leave the country based on the law. Now we're going to do a wrap-up story. We're going to talk about a very recent and real story, the Ukrainian refugees. In 2022, many people had to leave their homes to stay safe. These people became refugees in many countries. They needed protection in these other countries, and before traveling, a lot of these refugees needed a visa or a special permission. Some Ukrainians in Europe, for example, had a temporary protected status, TPS, which let them stay safely for a while. Many applied for asylum. That means they were asking a new country to protect them because they could not live safely in Ukraine. When refugees arrive, immigration officers check their documents at border control, and some refugees, depending on the country, can get a work permit so they can work and support their families in the new country. Many of these people want to stay longer and become permanent residents, and that means they can live there legally for years. And to do that, they might have to go to immigration court or apply for an adjustment of status, which changes their temporary permission to a more permanent one. And some will even apply for naturalization, which means becoming a citizen and getting the full rights of that country. Sometimes people face removal proceedings if there are problems with their papers. That means the government might ask them to leave or deport them. Refugees often attend a biometrics appointment, where they give fingerprints and photos as part of their application process. Many refugees get help from sponsors, people, or organizations who support their legal journey. This story shows how refugees face many legal steps, but immigration laws should try to help protect them and give them hope for a new life. And so we can look at all the words included in this story: visa, asylum, refugee, temporary protected status, immigration officer, border control, work permit, permanent resident, immigration court, adjustment of status, naturalization, removal proceedings, deportation, biometrics appointment, sponsorship, and citizenship. Great job! You've just learned 20 very important vocabulary terms in immigration law. You now know how to talk about visas, green cards, asylum, deportation, naturalization, and so much more with clarity and confidence. We explored each word with real examples, and at the end, you heard a story that brought it all together. Why is this important? Because in immigration law, language matters. These terms help you speak clearly to clients, understand legal documents, and work effectively with others. Whether you're a lawyer, assistant, or student, learning the right words is a huge step forward. Keep reviewing, keep practicing, and keep growing your legal English. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next lesson. The lesson you just watched is part of our full legal English course for lawyers and legal professionals. If you want access to all the lessons, plus community support and practice, join us on our school platform. The link is in the description.